Right. Okay. Yeah, it's recording now. Right. Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Pedro, and today I'm here with the one and only Mati Greenspan. Hi, Mati. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, Pedro?
Yeah, everything's fine, buddy. Everything's fine. As we were just talking about, the crypto spring. I mean, prices are quite good right now. Do you want to, do you want to before? Okay, but before we actually start, talking about TA and prices and everything, could you give our viewers just a little bit a brief explanation of your experience with cryptocurrencies, with blockchain, and of course with the traditional markets for anyone who's been living under a rock, of course. Just a little bit of your experience and who you are.
I'm nobody really. I like to talk about markets. I've always liked to talk about financial markets for as long as I can remember. My grandfather is a self-made billionaire. So when I was young, he was a self-made millionaire, and I get to watch that progression firsthand. So always around the dinner table, especially on the weekends, we were always, he would have guests over and always talk about business and stuff like that. And he would always make sure, for all of his children and grandchildren to kind of make sure to mentor us and how business and finance is working.
Of
So
course.
I was paper trading on gold. I
Mhm.
would take his Wall Street Journal at the age of 12 or 13. I would just keep track of the price of gold. And it's just been a passion of mine ever since. I've been working at various online brokers. I started in Ava FX in
Mhm.
2008.
Okay, a long time ago.
Um, yeah, I had front row tickets for the financial
Yeah, how was that
crisis.
experience?
It was completely crazy. It was like my introduction to being an insider in the finance industry, and couldn't have been at a better time.
Yeah, of
I
course.
started working at eToro in 2012.
Mhm.
You remember the end of the world. That was
Yep.
a big year for me. I got married, and then a few months later, started working at eToro. After I was there about 6 months, Yoni sent out an email about Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And I immediately, fell in love. I said, no, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the cure. This is the future of money. This was
Okay, so.
before, the mainstream
Uh-huh.
media had their day and started taking it apart and everything like this. It was like really we were first to the scene, and it kind of surprised me that that was the reaction because everybody is kind of still sore about what happened in 2008. I figured people would be looking for this type of solution, and by now I can see like for the first time, even those who are the most critical are all of a
Mhm.
sudden coming around, and we can name there's several famous people that have flipped on Bitcoin, even just within the last few weeks, who were previously skeptical and people that I admire, of course, and all of a sudden they're now coming and say, hey, wait a second, there's something here.
There's some value here. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's like it's all about fundamentals. I mean, if you do understand them, I think it's impossible not to love Bitcoin, not to love it, what it represents, I guess. Even if it doesn't work in the future, we'll never know what will happen like in 10 years or 20 years. But the technology is here, right? So we can just do it all over again, even if we need to. And I think that's like the greatest achievement of Bitcoin, at least at this moment, and the ability, of course, to create other cryptocurrencies to prove that we can use the same technology to build on other industries. I think that can be also a great achievement, basically, for the technology. I mean,
100%.
yeah, since your introduction to Bitcoin, I think, I mean, what do you think has changed, from the mentality, from the people around you? How do you think the field has changed and evolved
It's
during
gotten
these
a lot bigger.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
Awareness is, I believe, we're getting very close to full penetration as far as awareness is concerned. Just about everybody now knows, well, most people in the developed world, anyways, just about everybody knows what Bitcoin is,
Hmm.
but they don't necessarily know what Bitcoin is, right? They've heard of it, but then a lot of the people still have stigmas. I a video circulating just last week where this guy was going around a college campus and asking people, so do you want $1 or one Bitcoin? Which would you prefer?
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
you'd be surprised how many people are choosing the dollar. And then, he starts talking to them a little bit, and they're like, oh, wait a second. I want to change my answer as soon as they realize, okay, wait a second, what is this worth and what can you do with it?
yeah, exactly. I
So
mean,
we still have a lot of ways to go, but we've come a long way from nobody's ever heard of it to now there's an entire industry. I mean, at that time, in 2013, there weren't really very many altcoins, for example.
yeah, of course.
Um, Today we have a lot of crypto tribalism. We have people who go, one coin against another. Um, I was introduced to Ripple
Hmm.
in May of 2013. One of their delegates from Ripple, the company, came to eToro, gave us a lecture. They gave me 1,000 XRP. We called it Ripple at the time. It wasn't called XRP back
Hmm.
then.
Yep.
And they gave me 1,000 of them for free. I thought that was really cool. But it wasn't really formulated as part of the same industry as Bitcoin
Hmm.
is.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, since I mean, for you, since the beginning, do you think the mentality has changed between making Bitcoin just like a payment system, versus Bitcoin as a store of value? Do you think people now, at least the conversations usually go around this topic about Bitcoin being a store of value now at the moment? Do you think it will ever evolve again to being a payment system?
Do I believe that Bitcoin will evolve being a payment system? What does that mean?
Hmm.
Oh, you're talking about
I
the
mean,
shift into a store of value.
yes,
Um,
exactly, because yeah,
I don't know that it can.
okay.
At this point, it seems like kind of that ship is sailed. Uh,
Hmm.
as far as
Not
so,
even with a Lightning Network.
the Lightning Network, first of all, it's still a mess. I tried
Yeah,
using it. The interface is not very user friendly.
that's.
There are liquidity issues. If you're trying to send a
Hmm.
payment of $200 or more, it's going to be a problem.
Yep.
Look, if what you're trying to do is send pennies across the globe very cheaply, it's an amazing way. I mean, I was able
Hmm.
to send, 100 satoshis for free instantly,
Hmm.
which is pretty
Yep.
cool if you think about it. But I don't think that that's at the level that you can introduce it to a retail grocery store, for example. Um,
Hmm.
it's just not there. Will it get there? Maybe. There are other cryptos that I think are more interesting that can already do that if needed, right? To actually be introduced at the moment to major
Hmm.
retailers.
Are you talking about the
So I don't
Bitcoin
see that
Cash,
the
for
Lightning
example?
Network hasn't. Yeah, Bitcoin Cash,
Yeah.
Litecoin, XRP,
Hmm.
Dash. I mean, they're all kind of payment currency
Hmm.
tokens, and they could all easily be implemented. Probably even quicker than the Lightning Network.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if it's a matter of sending money fast, we can already do it. And you're right. We have loads of other cryptocurrencies we can use to do that. I think the hard thing to do is to replace the store of value purpose, which is basically, I agree with you, which is the most important feature at the moment. And
Yeah, I don't
I
look.
mean,
I'm quite certain that Bitcoin has an excellent use case as a store of value, and I don't know that we need to necessarily replace the payments aspect. The way I see it, Bitcoin can be used as a global reserve currency. No, I'm not talking
mhm.
about hyper Bitcoinization. I don't think that
Yeah, of course,
there are people out there who believe that Bitcoin can completely replace all
replace.
money
Yeah.
on Earth. And I've recently written an article just explaining why that can't happen. It's called hyper Bitcoinization. I wrote it about 3 days ago now. But what can happen is that even central banks, for example, can use Bitcoin as a store of value. Hey, we said you're going to behave, right? You want to say that way you're going to behave? Oh, daddy's on the phone? You got hurt? Want me to kiss it? Okay. Okay. Um, so, for example, Russia, I believe they've been, Putin has a very aggressive deadline to completely regulate Bitcoin. I don't know what the exact details are, if he wants to make it legal or how so, but he wants there to be a clear path for people to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. The Central
Hmm.
Bank of Russia says that this draft bill is just about ready, that they can be implementing it even this spring, which I think they're getting late in spring at the moment. So possibly within the next few days or weeks.
So I
They're
mean,
also talking. Yeah,
in
they're
terms.
talking. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry, but
No, no,
in
no
terms of
worries.
so yeah, so like in terms of regulation, do you think because you were saying you were just talking about it, I just wanted to expand a little bit on the regulation part. Do you think it can have a big impact in the future, or do you think that even if regulators try to support or block Bitcoin, that won't really affect the price and the use cases of Bitcoin?
It will affect the price and the use case. If a regulator bans Bitcoin, that increases the use case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What effect it will have on the price is not always very clear. It might actually increase the price because it
Mm-hmm.
will make it harder to obtain. So if something is harder to obtain, generally the price goes up. It might decrease the
Yep.
price because maybe less people will be interested. You don't really have any way of knowing. I suppose it depends really on the region itself and the people's will
Mm-hmm.
to defy the government. But we know that Bitcoin cannot be killed by governments because of its decentralized nature. And there isn't any, global government at the moment that has the power to come with an ultimate crackdown on Bitcoin or something like this. So
Okay.
regulation will be. See, the thing about regulators is crypto is catching them completely off guard, right? Because um, regulation tends to happen at a local level first, and then it
Mm-hmm.
expands to other region. So
Okay.
a stock market, for example, grows up in a specific place, let's say New York, and then other
Mm-hmm.
people, and the regulators are used to keeping an eye on it in New York, and then other people start wanting to trade on that, right? So let's say people from Berlin want to trade on the New York Stock Exchange, so now they can, and the Berlin regulators talk to the New York regulators, they figure out how to make that happen. For the first time in history, we have an asset class which is global by origin, right?
Yep.
So they're not prepared for something like this. Each regulator now needs to figure out how they're going to treat it in their region. Some might ban it. For example,
Mm. Well,
China banned
yep.
ICOs. Ostensibly, they banned exchanges too, though they didn't, do that officially yet. India seems to be on the path, on a not good path at the moment, but Indian government will
Yeah.
see. They don't usually
They've
move
done
very
it already,
fast
actually.
with emerging technologies. Other
I mean,
places are extremely
mm,
friendly. I mean, Malta, Switzerland, even Germany and France.
mm,
Estonia has great support for crypto, and there's all kind of countries that have come out, and they want to they want to be ahead of this. So that's why just regulation is going to be done on a case by case basis, and we won't have very much clarity, or we won't have complete clarity probably for a few years.
yeah, I agree. I think that probably one of the easiest ways for governments to basically influence like Bitcoin any way they can is either by having their own developers or owning Bitcoin. Otherwise, it's very hard to participate or to even block it, I guess.
Yeah, I
I
think that
mean,
self-regulation is going to be very important in this space, and I think that there are some
yeah.
companies that are working towards making all blockchain projects more transparent, and I think that that's an excellent way to go as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think well that's why the technology everything a little bit, at least a little bit more transparent and easy to use, probably in a global level, of course. You were talking about the central bank of Russia, basically, yeah, now being interested in Bitcoin. Do you think that there's a chance that the US dollar will lose some value as currency if Bitcoin gets a little bit more adopted? Not hyper Bitcoinization. I'm not talking about that. Just as well, there's as a digital store of value, let's say, instead of banks wanting to settle in USD, at least in countries like Iran, Russia, countries that have some problems with the United States. Do you think those countries will try to go into Bitcoin?
Well, they're already looking for
Mm-hmm.
alternatives.
Yeah.
Venezuela has introduced the petro. I don't know if we can
Mm-hmm.
call it a cryptocurrency or not. We know that it's completely
A scam currency.
untransparent. When I first heard about the petro, I thought it was a fantastic idea. You could have
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
one
remember.
crypto that's worth one. It's a stable coin pegged to the price of oil. You reduce the volatility and of the currency itself, right? If one is worth 1 barrel of oil, the barrel of oil has value. You can't print those out of into hyperinflation. You could also, using blockchain technology, track the redemption, right, and the store of oil, and prove that you actually have the reserves to back them up.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't
Yep.
go that route, unfortunately.
Yep.
It would be
They did. They,
nice.
they went the easy route, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, Iran is already working on their own crypto real, and Russia's already working on their own crypto ruble.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of in the works at the moment. Um, and it goes along with Representative Brad Sherman, who
Oh.
was congressman
Yeah.
in the United States, who said that the U.S. should basically
Yeah. Pure.
ban cryptocurrencies
Yeah.
completely. He does have a few valid points. Is that it does kind of undermine
Mm-hmm.
the totalitarian strength of the U.S. dollar. Right now, the U.S. dollar is the global reserve currency. Will it lose value as far as price? I'm not so certain. But
Mm-hmm.
the United States does very often enact unilateral sanctions and punishes other countries by way of the U.S. dollar. So
Yep.
for them to be able to now provide a kind of alternative, I think that does undermine uh, the overall strength. What I would say is, kind of reassuring for maybe Mr. Sherman, maybe not for him specifically, but for maybe other people in the U.S. government who are watching this space, is that the best way to to compete with Bitcoin is not to try and
Mm-hmm.
outlaw it, because if you try and outlaw it, you're only increasing the use case, right? As
Exactly.
the,
Yeah.
Bitcoin itself is an alternative to fiat money. It doesn't need to
Mm-hmm.
replace fiat money.
Exactly.
The more you make your own currency free and fair, you have a fiat that's stable and free and
Mm-hmm.
fair. People have no use for Bitcoin,
Exactly.
so
Mm-hmm.
this is the best way for them to kind of compete with it. And I think that even there's been significant research done by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. They released a research paper which I absolutely loved, which brought a case that Bitcoin, as a decentralized alternative to fiat money, can actually serve to strengthen the entire global economy.
Of course, and that makes sense actually.
Yeah, I mean, the global economy right now, and this is something that I learned from a Hong Kong professor in an online course that I did a few years back. He said that the global economy right now is standing on two wobbly legs, which is the U.S. dollar and the euro.
Mm-hmm.
And China's strategy over the last 50 years has been to introduce the renminbi as a global currency as well. Obviously, they don't want to do that aggressively or anything like that, but they do have that as a goal. And the way that the professor explained it was that instead of having two wobbly legs, we're now going to have three legs that the global economy can stand on. So think about a table with three legs
Yep.
is much more stable.
It's
Bitcoin
true. Yep.
comes to provide the fourth leg, which is something that's completely uncorrelated to the rest of the financial system. There's no risk of contagion, right, of
Mm-hmm.
spillover, but you do have an alternative that can be used to prop up the rest of the global economy.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very good analysis, I think, and I completely agree. Especially because, well, because the assets are not correlated. I mean, that's a great use case, at least for populations in general. I think if they have a problem with their native currency, they can always switch back to Bitcoin if there's a need. And I think the fact that fees are higher, that can make it that can even help people to exchange between fiat and Bitcoin, because sometimes it will be worth to pay an expensive fee to transact. Some other times you can use just like Fiat-currency that's very cheap to use. So actually I
Mm-hmm.
never thought about it like that, but it's a very good point. It's a very, very good point. Thank you, Mati. I mean,
You
just
got it,
in terms of
Pedro.
yeah. No, but that's a very that's a very good point. I never thought like people could like just switch back when there's a problem, and come back to it whenever they need to, when the government has like stable currency. Just
Right. Right.
just to talk a little bit to finalize the conversation about long term price prediction. Do you think that Bitcoin will go to the moon, or do you think that Bitcoin will will eventually go to the moon, but a little bit slower, or that
Uh,
Bitcoin will crash?
well, as you know, I have a very wide price prediction
Yeah.
for the end of the year. If you're quiet, I will take you on the trampoline in 5 minutes. Okay, go sit on the
Ooh,
couch. 5 minutes. Okay.
sounds nice.
Yes. Yes. Apple juice. Okay. Okay. No problem. I'll put shoes. Yeah. Go put shoes on. Good idea.
Uh,
Well, my
yeah.
end of year, end of decade, end of century
Yeah.
Bitcoin price prediction has not changed in the last 2 years. It
Okay.
Bitcoin can go anywhere between $100 and $1 million
True.
by the end of the year.
Okay.
If we're talking about multi-years, I think that yes, there is a possibility that can go higher, but there's also a possibility that can go lower. I mean,
True.
for example, if we have something else that I don't know, or somebody figures out how to get rid of Bitcoin, it's possible. We're talking about an emerging technology, and emerging technology is always very risky, but sometimes can be rewarding, right? If you think
Yeah.
about,
Of course.
people who invested $1,000 in Amazon stock, when it first came
Mm-hmm.
out, and they had the guts to hold it
To
as it
stick.
went from
Yeah.
$106 all the way down to $8, and they still holding today. They are very wealthy right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Probably there's not too many people like that. Um,
But I'm gonna say
but
something. If I
yeah.
if I bought Bitcoin, like even if it's at the all-time highs, it doesn't really matter. I bought some Bitcoin at the all-time high because I like to buy every month, and actually it was actually during during that period that I bought it. Doesn't matter. It's I buy it like on average every month, so it's fine. My point is, do you
Dollar
think that
cost
somebody who
averaging is an
buys
excellent
yeah,
strategy.
dollar cost average. That's my point. Yeah, I mean, if I like the point is, if I even if I bought that like all my Bitcoin at all-time highs, and it will. I understand the fundamentals. I mean, I don't have any incentive to sell. I have an incentive to buy more because now it's like 90% cheaper. So obviously, I'm going to buy way more if I still believe like if I believe in
Hmm.
fundamentals. I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with your analysis from in terms of the Amazon stock. It's exactly the same thing. I mean, if you just believe in the company, or in this case in the fundamentals of Bitcoin, how the technology works. I mean, of course, it will you can just stick
But
with
it
it,
is
and
risky.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
just think
yeah, it
about
is,
it.
of
For
course,
every
obviously,
one
yeah,
Amazon stock, there was another
there's
100
thousand,
companies, a
yeah,
thousand companies that didn't make it,
hmm
right? So
yeah, yeah, it's true,
always
yeah,
diversify yourself. And the more
Others. Yeah.
markets that you find yourself investing in, the more you're going to strengthen your own situation, your own portfolio.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And yeah, Mati, thank you so much. I won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much for the interview, for the conversation. It was a pleasure. And yeah, everyone, you should follow Mati Greenspan on Twitter. He has an awesome newsletter. I read it every day.
Thank
It's
you.
really yeah, it's really insightful. Yeah, yeah, it's really awesome because he speaks about cryptocurrencies, traditional markets, even about the news that are coming. So it's general overtake on the market. Quite it's really nice. It's really nice. So you should definitely follow his work. And yeah, Mati, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thanks for having me very much. I think I owe somebody a trampoline ride.
Yeah, you do now you do.
Have
All right,
fun.
man. Bye bye. Have fun
Bye.
on the trip. Bye bye, Mati. Bye.